Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming here. I'm really happy to see this fantastic crowd. We have friends, we have family, we have Asia Town, Cleveland here. Thank you for coming. My name is WONG. For those that don't know me, I'm just going to introduce myself very briefly as it relates to the reason why we're here. I am part of the Cleveland Asian Festival. My wife and Johnny in the background were two of the co-founders along with Vi Huen. I've been serving on the Cleveland Asian Festival Executive Committee and have been part of it since the beginning. I'm also part of OCA, Asian Pacific American Advocates, as the Vice President of Administration, and I also lead the Dragon Dance team. Sure. Asia Town is special. It's bordered amongst several different community development corporations. On the north side is St. Clair Superior Development Corporation, and my wife is on the board of that group. I'm on the board of Midtown Cleveland. And so we've seen a lot of the growth in the community through all the different activities that we participate in and that we volunteer for. But before us, there was an earlier generation. Stanley Eng is the definition of that earlier generation. He led the way. Stanley Eng, for those that don't know him, by the way, I'm just curious, by show of hands, how many people here knew Mr. Eng when he was alive? Yes. That's fantastic. So those with our hands up had the honor of knowing the gentleman that was Mr. Stanley Eng. And those that don't know him, you're going to learn about him through my brief remarks and through the remarks of several other speakers that we have coming up. Stanley really helped to pave the way and was a role model and an influence for so many of us, especially my wife, Lisa. As a young woman, she worked with Stanley on many different programs that we'll talk about shortly. As I mentioned, he was really the definition of a gentleman. He was always well-dressed. I can't remember a single time where he wasn't wearing a tie. It doesn't matter if it was at church or at a social gathering or something more formal. He had a wonderful personality. He was gentle. More importantly, he cared. He cared deeply about this community. He cared deeply about the people in the community. He cared deeply about those that were less fortunate. And especially his passion and what he cared about were the elderly, the senior citizens in the community. His efforts addressed the needs of the needy, and those efforts continue to have a lasting impact even today. Before I tell you more about Mr. Eng, I just want to welcome some special guests that we have. They're from out of town. They're Mr. Eng's family. There are 3 of his 4 children. And when they found out about this special occasion that their dad is going to be honored by, they wanted to be here. So please, Delia, Eudora, and Stan, please raise your hand and stand forward, like right here. Come forward, please. That's great. I just wanted everyone to know that they were here. They also have, Mr. Eng also had a daughter, Cynthia, who just could not make it. They traveled from Chicago, Los Angeles, and Columbus. So this was obviously an auspicious occasion, and they wanted to be here. So Mr. Eng, and that's how I always called him. He was always Mr. Eng to me when I was growing up. He was born in 1926, and he was a community pillar in this area. Back then, it wasn't Asia Town. Back then, it was just Chinatown. He was a modest and soft-spoken man. He took a quiet but impactful approach to community change. Before he served those in this community, he also served this country. He was a U.S. Army veteran. He served in World War II, and he also served in the Korean War. He earned his chemistry degree from Rutgers University. And in this community, that's where we see his lasting impacts. And I'm going to go through those. Again, everything that he did, it was not for himself. It was not because he knew he was going to get a sign dedicated to him. He did it behind the scenes, again, because of his love and his caring for this community. He founded and led several organizations. The first that I'll mention is the Cleveland Chinese Senior Citizens Association. He was its first president, and that group and organization still exists today. He was best known for his work on behalf of the poor and the elderly residents in this area. He led efforts to establish an Asiatown Health Center. In fact, up until a couple years ago, that facility was right upstairs from this very building. It was because of his efforts, his recognition that the elderly in this community needed language-appropriate help in medical services, and he made sure that that was available. He also organized the Chinese Newcomers Service Center, providing just a wealth of services to the community. Mr. Eng also spearheaded efforts to provide the much-needed housing for elderly Chinese residents. This eventually led to the construction of the Asian Evergreen Housing Apartments, which is right up the street on Payne Avenue. And if you're not familiar with it, after the dedication of the sign, just drive up Payne. It's around East 38th Street, and you'll be able to see it. There are many residents, seniors, that live there today for decades because of the impact of Mr. Eng. For those that live in the Asian Evergreen housing, please raise your hand. There might be a language barrier. Needless to say, they're here and they're appreciative of the work that Mr. Eng did. And I apologize, my Chinese isn't good enough. I'm not going to do it with all these cameras going. I've done that before, it's not pretty. He also launched a meal program that serves 50 seniors per day at Li Hua Restaurant. That's key because he knows the Asian palate, the Chinese palate, isn't hamburgers and French fries, and he made sure that there was food that these seniors would love and enjoy. Probably most dear to him was the work that he did for the church. And one of the later speakers is going to talk more about that. But while he was able to meet the physical needs of the community through housing, through the food programs, through medical services, through translation services, through English classes, he wanted to make sure that the people in this community also had the opportunity to know Jesus. And you'll hear more about that shortly. The street sign reads right here, Stanley Eng Way. And to me, it has a couple of meanings. The street is a destination, it's Asiatown, and it's going to be recognizable as part of this community for years to come. But I also like to think about it this way. I've already mentioned how Mr. Eng led as a role model. He volunteered his services. He cared for this community. This is what we should all do. We should reach out. We should love our neighbors because that is the Stanley Eng way. We're here today because of Ward 7 Councilman Bashir Jones. I had the pleasure of introducing him this spring at the Cleveland Asian Festival, where we first announced that we were going to dedicate this street to Mr. Eng. And we're here today because the street signs are up and we're here to celebrate as a community. So thank you very much, BASHEER. I'm going to introduce some other VIPs that are going to come up and talk a little bit later. But at this point, I want to turn the microphone over to Mr. Jason Lin. He represents the Cleveland Chinese Senior Citizens Association as a board member, and translating for him is WILFRED CHUNG.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
各位朋友，
I'm very honored today to share the memory for Mr. Stanley Eng.
今日我覺得好榮幸咧，能夠喺呢度有機會同大家分享吳先生嘅生平。
Regarding about his history, Mr. Wang probably already introduced a lot of them, but I just want to add a little bit more.
咁吳生嘅生平咧，Wing 咧就已經同大家講解咗啦。咁咧，我咧就只想同大家再分享多些少有關於吳生嘅少少嘅生平。
Presently, I'm the president for the Cleveland Benevolent Association.
咁咧，我就係今年嘅中華會館嘅主席。
Also, I'm the vice president for the Evergreen Apartment.
咁我亦係長青會嗰個副主席。
The reason that I am involved with the Asian organization is all because Mr. Eng.
我參加所有嗰啲咁嘅中國嗰啲咁嘅聯會咧，主要都係經過係吳生嘅介紹。
Yeah, he recruited me during the early 90s.
咁喺1990年嗰個期間咧，係由於吳生嘅推薦或者係介紹，先至有機會我去參加。
So since then, I've been following his footsteps to continue to serve the Cleveland community.
咁我希望咧就有機會能夠係繼續跟吳生嘅步路去繼續去做佢應該要做嘅事情。
Also, when Mr. Wong introduced about the Evergreen Building, we missed one thing that we never mentioned about.
咁Wing 頭先介紹咗長青會吳生有些少生平嘅事蹟之後咧，有一件事佢係漏咗嘅，我喺度想同大家補充一下。
During the construction, the budget never including the kitchen in the Evergreen Building.
咁喺長青會嗰個大廈喺建築嘅期間咧，佢嗰個預算咧係冇預算到係起一個廚房喺度嘅。
Because the senior is very difficult to go out to have a lunch outside during the winter time.
咁因為長青會嗰啲老人家咧喺冬天咧就比較係有啲困難出邊去食嘢啦，因為天氣冷啦。
So he himself take out more than 150,000 to build the kitchen and the cafeteria for the senior in the Evergreen Building.
咁吳生咧其實係自己係揞咗15萬出嚟喺長青嗰度係起咗依個廚房同埋個飯堂嘅，係自己揞咗15萬出嚟嘅。
That's why today we can have lunch inside the building, even no matter what kind of weather it is.
因為吳生咁嘅貢獻咧，所以而家長青會嘅老人家咧有機會喺長青大廈嗰個廚房同埋嗰個飯堂可以安心咁喺度進餐。
Also, one thing very regretfully is he never can see the kitchen operated.
咁有一樣非常之遺憾嘅話咧，就係吳生咧就係冇機會係睇到長青大廈嗰個廚房嗰個飯堂係完全起建完咗，咁佢已經係走咗啦。佢係冇自己親身睇得到佢個完成嘅工程。
And also, he have an idea at that time willing to put a Cleveland Asian Credit Union to operate to helping the community, but that also cannot be achieved because he passed away.
咁其實咧，吳生咧亦有一個概念，想喺呢個唐人嗰個中心嗰度咧起一個嗰啲信託嘅機構，但係呢個概念咧好可惜冇辦法可以達成得到。
So today I'm here to honor him and also thank you for Councilman Chung and also the OCA to organize and help out to get the name recognized, and also for the Asian community who can remember forever. Thank
咁
you.
啊，今日咧我喺度咧就同佢嚟慶祝，咁啊好多謝阿議員阿 Mr. Chung 同埋 OCA 能夠安排呢一個咁嘅事情，希望大家都可以有大家一齊嚟共享分享阿吳生嗰個值得高興嘅事情。喺度多謝大家。
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. And I knew a lot about the many things that Mr. Eng did. I did not know that story about the kitchen in the Asian Evergreens apartment. So I'm so glad that he was able to share yet another example of how Mr. Eng cared so deeply for this community. Next up, I want to welcome my good friend, Don Fong, who will be representing the Cleveland Chinese Christian Church. It's the church that Mr. Eng loved very dearly, and Don's going to tell you about that.
Thanks, Wayne. On behalf of the Cleveland Chinese Christian Church, I do want to just thank our city of Cleveland, Councilman Jones, all the Asian leaders who initially I remember being on an email where they said, hey, let's think of somebody who we could nominate to have a street named after them in the Asiatown community. And I kind of kept silent because I didn't want to, really say who, I really didn't think I could contribute much, but it was so interesting to see, like, eventually the email started mentioning Stanley Eng, and then more and more people were saying, yeah, Stanley Eng. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. The Mr. Eng, as Wayne said, Mr. Eng has such an impact on this community in so many ways that even though he is not with us anymore, yet many of this generation, this younger generation, still realize that he had a lot to contribute to help the people of this community in Asiatown. I do want to just share briefly about Mr. Eng. As a member of the Cleveland Chinese Christian Church, I started attending the church when I was a wee little kid, and Mr. Eng was really like kind of like a father figure at the church because he saw these scruffy little kids from Chinatown coming in, and he always was very, very kind to us. He would always smile, as Wayne said. His children were also very precious to us. His daughter Eudora was my Sunday school teacher, so so it's really cool to be able to see his family and how they served the people in the church. Now I know that Mr. Eng was very humble and very modest, but I do want to just say a lot of that was because Mr. Eng knew the Lord Jesus. He I don't exactly know at what age, but by the time he was in Cleveland, God had saved him from his sins, and he was able to see that he was a forgiven man, and so therefore his whole life was now going to be lived for the Savior who died for him. And so as a result of that, Mr. Eng and some of the early families in Chinatown, they would visit door to door, and they would visit all the families that they could find who were living in Chinatown to try to reach out to them and help them to know this Jesus that he loved. And so one of the families was my cousin's family, one of the Fong families. And as a result of that family came to faith in Christ. And then they brought me later on as one of the little cousins, who then later on I was also introduced to Jesus, and I trusted him as my Savior. And so really I owe so much to Mr. Eng for being an ambassador to me and being the one who introduced my family to know Christ. And later on, my mother, who was not a believer at the time, she still lived down in this community, and I would always hear her say, "Oh yeah, we had a great lunch today at the Asian Evergreen apartments," or she would say, "Oh, Mr. Eng is so kind. He did this for us, and he did that." And then, and I always, in the back of my mind, I said, "Yeah, Mr. Eng is that way because he knows Jesus." And so eventually, my mother herself, I think, through various circumstances, and I know that the Lord was working in her heart, eventually she became a believer. And so I really credit, obviously God worked in her heart, but I really credit the testimony of Mr. Eng and how he was faithfully serving those around him. He didn't do it for recognition or for money. In fact, he was giving out money. He was giving away all the things that God had given him so that the community would be blessed and that so that others can hear the good news about Jesus. And so really, all I can really say is that, here's a man that, he had such an impact because he knew the Lord. And so to this day, our church, we eventually did move out to the suburbs. I just want to mention that briefly. We met at Oldstone Church for a number of years. And then eventually we were able to move out to Richmond Heights because we found a location that was kind of closer to a lot of the members and a lot of new Chinese families who were living out of that way. But Mr. Eng always had a heart for Chinatown, and he always would try to organize some kind of a mission here. He would try to encourage us, come back to Chinatown and let's minister to the people that are still here. And so eventually we came and we purchased the building that's now across the street from Wonton Gourmet. And that, again, as some have shared, he was very instrumental in helping us obtain that facility. He himself contributed very generously to ensure that we had the funds to purchase that building and eventually to even renovate it. So again, that was Mr. Eng's heart. He didn't see money as a barrier. He said, if you don't have enough money, the Lord gave you money, so I'm going to give that to his service. So again, we're blessed. We're still in the community. Our church is it's small, but because of what God has done through Mr. Eng, we're able to really reach out and share good news with them, and also serve the community however we can, whatever the needs are. We want to be there. So again, because of Mr. Eng, we're able to do that. And so just in closing, again, I appreciate how Mr. Eng made an impact on Wayne, who was my classmate in elementary and college. So I'm glad that he was able to, be a part of this. And I hope that, Mr. Eng's legacy, besides all the good work that he did, I hope his legacy of faith, that he trusted in Christ, that those of you who are here who may be curious as to what drove Mr. Eng to be so compassionate, that you would look to the Savior who did so much for him, who died for him and who saved him. So again, that's why I'm here, and so I'm so thankful for that. Thank you.
Great job, Don. That he covered the part that I missed in my introduction to him. He and I did grow up on these, we'll call it the mean streets of Asiatown, before it was Asiatown. Back then, folks now, they kind of, I don't want you to take Asiatown for granted. This was not here a few decades ago. We did not have Ball Waffle and Hong Kong waffles. We did not have dim sum. We did not have markets nearby. I remember my family, we would have to take a bus to go to Toronto just so that we could experience the Asian culture that we wanted to experience. So now everyone can do that right here in Asiatown. And it's a better place because of people like Mr. Eng. You've heard plenty about that. I want to just introduce a few other people. First of all, I can't find her. She's out here somewhere. But Karis Sang, she is the new Midtown Cleveland. She's the new Midtown Cleveland Asiatown project manager. So her job is to work within this community. I also want to call Joyce Wong. She's back there somewhere with her family and her new baby. This activity actually started with the signs before Karis was here, and Joyce really kind of held the mantle for a while to make sure that it happened. I also wanted to introduce Mr. Jeff Epstein. He's the executive director of Midtown Cleveland. Where is Jeff? There he is, right in the back. It's because of the impactful work of Midtown that many of the neighborhoods, not just Asiatown, is on the rise. And so thank you for Jeff and his very capable team. I want to shout out to Marcia Nolan. She's the executive director of the St. Clair Superior Development Corporation. Not sure where she's at. And I'm not sure if Mark Lamden is here, executive director of Campus District. Let's give him a round of applause anyways. Thank you. Mr. Ed Chenak from the City of Cleveland's Community Development. Thank you very much, Ed, for all your work. I want to also thank the Commissioner of Traffic and Engineering, Commissioner Mavick. I don't know if he's here, along with his team, Russ Schutt and London Kelly at the City Cleveland Sign Shop. We want to give a shout out for the Cleveland Asian Festival. We also want to thank IdeaStream, WVIZ, and Freshwater Cleveland for featuring the naming of this street, Stanley Eng Way, on their media. So thank you very much. We want to thank the news crew that's here today, shooting this very important event for this community so that all of Cleveland can recognize the contributions that Mr. Eng made, not just those that live here. Now, without further, actually, before I do that, I want to also ask those that are part of the Asia Town Strategic Task Force to raise their hand. There are a few people here that were very much involved in just planning for this Asia Town community, and they were involved in making the very hard decision about who is so deserving that they should have this honor, and very clearly identified Mr. Eng as that person. Don't be shy. So Lisa, you stand up, please. Lisa Wong, Johnny Wu, Debbie Yu. I'm sorry, I don't know everyone's names. Kathy, Haka, Tessa, Swan, and anyone else? Steve Hom. I can't hear. Just shout it out. No, I said Debbie already. I got it, wife. Chai, definitely from the city of Cleveland. All right.
Relations Board, John Ryan member.
Thank you very much. And actually, let us not forget to thank the proprietors of Asia Plaza for hosting this wonderful event, the Ham family. We got Steve, Harold, Randy, Ed, and of course their mother, Donna. Let's give them a round of applause. Now, we're here because of the concerted efforts of one individual. He came to the community and said, we have an opportunity to name a street after one of your own. You guys know the community best. You guys tell me who's deserving of this honor. So please welcome Councilman BASHEER Jones. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So excited to be here with you. And first and foremost, we thank God for giving us another day of life. And we've had some hard times in the city of Cleveland over the past couple of weeks. A lot of young people have passed away. And anytime that you lose your young people, despite where they come from, if you're a parent, if you're a human being, you can't help but to feel this in your heart. I want to thank my good friend, Director Epstein from Midtown. I'm so lucky to have him and to have Ward 7 and have Midtown within Ward 7 and to have a leader like him. So him and I, we were talking, and it's very important to me, how do we make sure that our members from the Asian community feel like home? and this is very important, that you should know that this is your home. Not just because you live here, but because it belongs to you. And our city cannot grow and be successful if we do not embrace the beauty of every culture. Of every culture. As I travel around the country and the world for that matter, and you go to different places, whether you're in New York or you're in DC or you're in Toronto, and you see this beautiful Asian culture. And it's like, even though I'm this young black boy from Huff, I can't help but to feel inspired at the culture of the Asian community. And I can remember being a young boy, I would come over here, my mom and I, and go to Dave's. And I would say, I want to go to that place over there. I don't know what it says on there, but it looks like a nice place. And I tell you that the people were always so nice. And you remember that. It's one thing to say that you love God, but if you don't treat God's creation with respect and love, then how much can you say that you love God? In the word it says, how do you say that you love God that you don't see? Hate man that you do see? Surely you are a liar. So if we say that we love God, you can tell that Stanley Eng loved God, not because he said it, but because of how he treated the people. If you don't treat the people well, if you don't treat the creation of God well, then how do you say that you love God? This is extremely important. So the director and I were talking, not only did we want to, as far as do a street, but we wanted to bring somebody in, like Karis, who's been doing a phenomenal job. Oh my God. Yes. Man, she's been doing phenomenal, man. Sometimes I think she's my boss, Joyce. But we wanted to hire someone that can be someone that's totally dedicated to the Asian community. I mean, Joyce was doing such phenomenal work, and it's important that you have, because even though you have Ward 7, you have these different sections that need its own attention. And that's what we wanted to do for the Asian community. And Karis has done a phenomenal job, Joyce has done a phenomenal job, and of course, Director Epstein. So, in my closing, what can we do that will make sure that Mr. Eng's name will live forever? Now, in the Egyptian quote, there's an Egyptian quote that says, we suffer 2 deaths. The first death is the physical death. The second death is when the last person that you've impacted passes away. Which means that when people stop mentioning your name. So we don't want Mr. Eng's name to ever not be mentioned. Even if you're saying, what's the direction to Asian Plaza, you're gonna have to say, well, Stanley Eng, you gotta make a right on Stanley Eng. Then forever, Mr. Eng's name will live, not only in the hearts of the people he impacted, but also in the heart of Cleveland. And my goal as councilman is every culture, particularly in Ward 7, that I want to know who your hero is. Your hero may not necessarily be my hero, not because of lack of love, but maybe I just didn't know his story, or I didn't know her story. But now Mr. Eng becomes not only a hero for the people that he physically impacted, but he becomes a hero for all of Cleveland. Because Mr. Eng not only impacted Asia Town, but his impact impacted the entire city of Cleveland. And if we're gonna be successful in our city, we have to recognize every single culture that impacted this city, and we have to highlight them and put them on the pedestal. Do you agree? Yes. Do you agree? Yes. So thank you for allowing me to honor you. Thank you for allowing me to enjoy and to also make Mr. Eng my hero as well. And this is my way of showing my love to you, that I appreciate what you've done, because your work has not only impacted your community, but it has impacted the entire city. May God bless you, May God bless the beautiful children of Mr. Eng and all the work that they're doing. And may God bless every last one of you who are here. And I say to you in closing, that if we say that we love God, we have to love God's creation. Despite if they don't believe what you believe, despite if they are Republicans or Democrats, despite if they are a dog or a cat, it does not matter who they are and what they are. If you love God, you must love what God created. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
So you're a little bit taller than me, Councilman. So before we introduce our next speaker, I just wanted to read a certificate proclamation of recognition. This is from Congresswoman Marsha Fudge's office. It reads, in honor of Stanley Eng Way, street dedication ceremony. The more man meditates upon good thoughts, the better will be his world and the world at large, says Confucius. It is a pleasure to honor the legacy of Stanley Eng for his commitment to Asiatown and the greater Cleveland community. Through a lifetime of commitment and service, Mr. Eng enriched the lives of many. He will always be remembered for his work on behalf of the poor and elderly residing in Cleveland's Asiatown. On behalf of the residents of the 11th Congressional District of Ohio, I am pleased to join in on the street dedication honoring Mr. Stanley Eng. May his impact continue through the lives of everyone he touched. May God bless and keep you. Signed, Marsha L. Fudge, Member of Congress. So thank you. So please, I want to invite the children of Mr. Eng up so that they can receive this from the Congresswoman.
Yeah.
Let's do this one. So we'll do this one and then.
All right, okay. Here, what do you want to?
Okay, don't go anywhere because we have more coming. And I'll keep this here so you don't have to hang on to it, and then remember to get it. Next up, I want to introduce, as she's shaking Dan's hand, Cuyahoga County Councilwoman Yvonne Conwell. She's been a great supporter of this community. She's always coming out to the Cleveland Asian Festival, and she's here to celebrate with us today. Please give up a round of applause for her.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay. So maybe you're a little taller than me. I've never had the pleasure to sit down and have a conversation with Mr. Eng to learn about his future plans for this community, and hearing the great works about him today. I'm sure he had plenty, but I'm honored to be here today to celebrate with the family and the friends and the community for this long time honor and this dedication to Stanley Eng Way. I would like to present this proclamation to his family from Cuyahoga County government to recognize his great works for his seniors, for his community, and for his Christian brotherhood that we all heard about today. It takes a special person that wants to give back to members in the community, and he may live there or he may not live there, but his passion has surely has shown what he has done in this community and the great works that you all heard about, the church, the Evergreen, seniors food meals. That's where I kind of come in to make sure that things like that continue. So if you work here, if you're a stakeholder in this community and there's issues, make sure that you reach out to my office for that. So I want to make sure that I present this proclamation, and it's usually the counties is not as beautiful as the cities. So I try to always make, and I'm working on it, trying to get them to make better ones. But I always, if there's a special person and this is a special day, I make sure that their picture is ingrained into the proclamation. And I'm gonna sit down, but basically it states all the great works that was spoke about today and more that you'll hear about. God bless.
Open it.
Yeah, open it. Open it. Lift your head. Look here, smile. Oh, smile. Big smile. All right.
Now, the reason we're here, we're going to present this sign. We're going to dedicate this sign. Councilman Jones is going to do the honors to the family
Can we
of
bring,
Mr. Eng.
can we bring Karis, can you come up here, and Director, can you come up here, and Joyce, where are you, Joyce? Come on. Couldn't have did it without these. We're like the Ninja Turtles. So, on behalf of, sorry.
So my understanding is that there's other family members of Mr. Eng here, his grandchildren, spouses of his children. Please come up, all the kids, the spouses. You guys need to be up here because you have a lot to be proud of. Mr. Stanley Eng.
Okay. Thank you so much. Once again, I just want to say again, thanks to Midtown. Thank you so much to this great community. And on behalf of,
Maybe we could do
okay, go ahead.
Hang on, guys. Let Councilman finish talking, and then we'll take care of the pictures. Everyone, we're gonna have plenty of time for pictures.
All right, they're excited, I understand. So on behalf of Ward 7, on behalf of Midtown, on behalf of the city of Cleveland, we want to take the time to honor your dad, your grandfather, this great man, Mr. Stanley Eng, and East 30th will forever be known as Stanley Eng Way.
I believe the plan is we're going to go outside. Hopefully everyone can join us. We're going to go outside and we're going to conclude the ceremony there. But so that we don't have to shout outside, let me close this formal part of the program by saying, as you drive by with your friends and your family and you see this sign, remember Mr. Stanley Eng. It's not just a sign, it is his way. He served this community, and may you do the same. Have a good day. We'll see you outside.